We're now up to chapter 1, Mishna 9 in our study of Pirkei Avot in the Green Siddur on page 526. And as usual, we'll read the text of the Mishnah, along with the translation of Rabbi Sachs alav hashalom. So this Mishnah says as follows: Shimon ben Shatach Omer. Shimon ben Shatach used to say frequently, Hevei marbeh lachakor et ha'edim. Examine the witnesses thoroughly, v'hevei zahir bidvarecha, and be careful in your words, shema mitocham yilmadu l'shaker, lest through them, through your words, the witnesses will learn how to lie. Now, what's the context of this Mishnah in particular? So you may recall from previous videos that Shimon ben Shatach is one of the zugot, one of the pairs together with Yehuda ben Tabai. And Yehuda ben Tabai explained in the previous Mishnah about the importance of judging fairly and judging accurately as well, both before the judgment has taken place and afterwards. So Shimon ben Shatach is continuing that theme, it would seem. And just as a reminder that these two sages lived in the first part of the last century BCE. So we're talking probably between about 80 and 60 approximately of the last century BCE. The monarchy at the time was towards the end of the Hasmonean dynasty, and in particular a very difficult ruler called Alexander Yanai, and Queen Shlom Tzion, who was actually the sister of Shimon ben Shatach, which had a very important effect on modifying, perhaps dealing with, perhaps is a better way of putting it, some of the very difficult successes of Alexander Yanai and the cruelties of Alexander Yanai, and also helping Shimon ben Shatach in particular establish the Brushim, the Pharisees, in their rightful place as the authentic tradition of Judaism and the authentic transmission of Judaism as well. Much more to say on that, but that's beyond what we're looking at in this Mishnah. So let's look at what Shimon ben Shatach says. The question is, first of all, who is he speaking to? On the face of it, it would appear that by saying, be very careful to investigate and examine the witnesses carefully, that he's speaking to judges. And in fact, Talmudic sources, both in the Bavli and the Yerushalmi, the Babylonian and the Jerusalem Talmud, note, not unusually, that Shimon ben Shatach and Yehuda ben Tabai would have between them had the roles of Nasi, the leader of the community, and the head of the Bet Din, the head of the rabbinical courts, perhaps even the Sanhedrin is a better way of putting it, the great rabbinical courts. And as such, this instruction is particularly addressed to judges, and that follows on from what Yehuda ben Tabai taught in the previous Mishnah. Nonetheless, the lessons from it, I think, are very significant for everybody, as we will discuss shortly. But why does Shimon ben Shatach need to put this in this particular way? Well, first of all, he's drawing, of course, on Jewish teachings and laws that go all the way back to Mount Sinai. But one of the things he really wanted to do, we can suggest, is to establish the authentic interpretation and application of Jewish law as the Prushim, as the Pharisees were doing. So therefore, when it came to judges, he had not only to make sure that they were judging in an equitable and fair and correct way, but also in a way that was faithful with Jewish law. And in doing so, building what Yehuda ben Tabai said in the previous Mishnah, it was important that the judges didn't make themselves, in some way, people who were interfering in the judicial process by encouraging the witnesses to say certain things. Instead, be very careful to examine the witnesses properly and carefully, and to let them give their evidence. And be very careful what you say as a judge, because from the inference or more of what you say, the witnesses might decide to even lie. They might try and pick something up which is not the absolute truth of what their testimony is. And of course, there isn't an enormous importance in this, not just in judicial matters, but in everyday matters. That when one needs to find out the heart of a matter, get to the heart of a matter, find things out, when one is trying to teach children about how to understand the best way to relay information, it's very important that we don't give anybody the opportunity to learn from what we're saying, so that they might speak mistruths or falsehood in any way. And that, of course, is something which is a really important matter in all areas of society. And we see it, I'm sure, in places around us today and in contexts which we engage in. So Shimon ben Shatach, even though he's talking in the initial sense, in a judicial context, nonetheless has messages for us about what is a Jew. A Jew is someone who lets other people speak, and as the Mishna will say later on, does not interrupt the views of other people, is someone who also is careful with their words and thoughtful, and of course is aiming for the truth, which is of course what we need to strive for. Rabbi Sachs alav Shalom, in I think one of his most powerful, if I may put it this way, pieces of covenant and conversation, certainly reflecting personally, noted, and this will deal with later on in Pirkei Avot as well, all being well, that a battle, an argument which is a battle for truth rather than a battle for victory, is an argument that will endure. He based this on the writings of the medieval Rabbi Menachem HaMeiri, and applied it to the Mishnah, which is in chapter 5 about machloket l'shem shamayim, dispute for the sake of heaven. And I think there's a very important and powerful lesson in there, that dispute which is for the sake of truth will endure, and maybe sometimes is even necessary and helps to clarify matters, and ultimately should bring people together. But if it's for the sake of victory, that can be really, really problematic. So those are some of the ideas on the teachings of Shimon ben Shattach, and we will look at the next zugot, the next pair, in the following Mishnah. Have a great day.